Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Vikram Nehru. I'm a Senior Associate and Bakri Chair in Southeast Asian Studies at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. And a very warm welcome to you on a very cold day. After that, a splendid introduction by our two keynote speakers. Let us launch straight into this first panel. As Jessica Matthews indicated in her opening remarks, this conference is about extending support to Myanmar in a way that provides a useful use of resources, so that there's effective coordination between Japan and the United States, two very important providers of support to Myanmar. And that hopefully, as a result of this conference, that coordination improves and maybe even becomes a model for international donor coordination towards Myanmar and hopefully for other countries. And so in this first session, we are immediately going to discuss the economic conditions in Myanmar, the government's development priorities, what the United States and Japanese governments are doing in these countries, what the private sector is doing in Myanmar, and how these organizations coordinate with one another and coordinate with the rest of the international community. To help us kick off this discussion, we have Toshihiro Kudo, who will provide us with a presentation. He is a senior researcher in the Institute of Developing Economies in the Japan External Trade Office, or JETRO. We then have four discussants: Manpreet Anand, who is a senior advisor at the Asia Bureau of USAID; Orit Frenkel to my left, the senior manager for international trade and investment in General Electric; and then Ryosuke Nakata, Deputy Director General for Southeast Asia and the Japan Agency for International Cooperation, and welcome to all of you. So may I ask Kudo Sensei to begin? Thank you.
Madam Jessica Matthew, thank you very much, Vikram-san. Madam Jessica Matthew, His Excellency Ambassador Mr. Sasae, His Excellency Ambassador Ucho Myotu, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, very good morning. It is my honor to have an opportunity to talk at this important conference organized by Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. And then this morning, it's snowing. I like very much snowing Washington. The title of my presentation is Myanmar's New Growth Strategy. After decades of isolation, Myanmar is now actively re-engaging with the global economy. Under the new international environment, what shall be the new growth strategy for Myanmar economy? On June 12, 2012, President U Thein declared that the government entered into the second phase of reform strategy, that is, economic reforms and development. First, the president said Myanmar seeks for a very high economic growth, targeting 1.7-fold rise in per capita GDP after a 5-year plan. It may be a little bit difficult to achieve, though. Then he announced four economic policies. The first one is the development of agriculture and all-round development. Second is the balanced and proportionate growth among regions and states. The third is inclusive growth for the entire population. And fourth is emergence of reliable statistics. So based on these policies, I'd like to propose four new growth strategies. That is, agriculture plus, two-polar growth strategy, export-oriented, FDI-driven growth strategy, and economic corridor development. First is agriculture. So the first policy of the government is development of agriculture. It is understandable that the Myanmar government regards agriculture as its economic pillar. Myanmar is still an agriculture-oriented economy, as you see in the table. However, Myanmar's industrial sector shows a rise in its share of GDP for the last decade, and the Myanmar government expects the share of industry surpasses that of agriculture in the near future. Moreover, agriculture may not be the main growth engine for the Myanmar economy in the long run. The graph shows the Thai GDP growth by sector contribution. The Thailand has a similar resource endowment with Myanmar and could be a like future for Myanmar economy. Agriculture substantially contributed to Thai growth in the 1960s, but its contribution had declined over the time to almost zero in 1990s and after. Instead, manufacturing sector continuously increased its contribution to Thai growth over the last 5 decades. The Myanmar economy may follow suit. So what is the role of agriculture in the long-run economic development of Myanmar? Agriculture provides livelihood majority of the population. The share of employment in agriculture sector declines as GDP per capita increases. However, the decline in employment share of agriculture will be slower than that of GDP share. It is rather surprising to know that even Thai agriculture, Thailand has more than 5,000 per capita GDP, absorbed about 40% of the total employment in 2009. So Myanmar agriculture continues to be a main livelihood for the majority of the population. And moreover, the absolute value added in agriculture can increase with lesser workforce, as shown by the experiences of the Myanmar neighbors, such as Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam. So the development agriculture means productivity enhancement. I call it, this is a 1+, and broadening value-adding activities along the value chain. So this is, I call it another plus. So we call this strategy as agriculture plus. To achieve this agriculture plus, we have to do the many things. Quality seeds necessary, farm management necessary, improvement in post-harvest system necessary, and so on. The second strategy is two-polar growth strategy. The second policy of the Myanmar government is balanced and proportionate growth among regions and states. In Myanmar, there are 14 regions and states. In region, mainly the Burmese people live, and then the states, the minority people live. Myanmar is geographically and ethnically diversified, and regional equality is important in political and social terms. However, in economic terms, there is the trade-off between high economic growth and regional income equality, particularly for low-income countries like Myanmar. Economic agglomeration enhances economic growth, and economic growth requires economic agglomeration. These maps shows economic agglomeration for the 3 countries, Thailand on your left, and then Vietnam on the right, and then in between Myanmar. Thailand has one agglomeration, one growth pole, that is Bangkok. On the other hand, Vietnam has the 2 growth poles, agglomeration, Ho Chi Minh City and Hanoi. And Myanmar is actually one in between, 1.5 growth poles. Yangon with about 5 million population, Mandalay, Yangon, and Mandalay with about 1.5 million population. The Naypyidaw is a capital city, but they don't have much agglomeration. So which direction shall Myanmar head for? Single pole or 2 poles or many poles seeking for regional equality? So we propose two-polar growth strategy. That is, prioritize not only Yangon, but also Mandalay, but at the same time avoiding many polars, given the existing population distribution and industrial cluster. So this is also related to the poverty alleviation. The two growth poles, Yangon and Mandalay, can address more than 50% of poverty population in Myanmar. By developing Yangon, you can reduce poverty in Irrawaddy region, the region with the largest population and the largest poor people. By developing Mandalay, you can reduce poverty in the central dry zone, that is Mandalay, Magwe, and Sagaing, the second largest population, and also the many poor people. Many of 7 states, however, where the ethnic minorities are sparsely populated, should have different strategy for growth rather than industrialization. The Myanmar government needs to concentrate its scarce resources in Yangon and Mandalay for industrialization. The two-pole growth strategy will not sacrifice the overall economic growth and at the same time achieve relatively balanced growth. And the third strategy is the export-oriented and FDI-driven growth. Myanmar has long been under the Western sanctions, but nevertheless, Myanmar's trade experienced a growth for the last 2 decades. Export increased by 16 times for the period from 1990 to 2010. However, Myanmar's export expansion was made possible by the export of natural resources such as gas and timber and jade and gems. This is not actually called as export-oriented growth. For example, Vietnam export increased by 80 times. You can see this for the same period. As a result, Myanmar's export was less than 10% of that of Vietnam in 2010. While Myanmar exports natural resources, especially the natural gas, 40%, Vietnam exports various kinds of manufactured goods, including not only apparel and footwear, but also the telecommunication appliances, including smartphones by Samsung. So this makes a big difference between the two countries' export performance. Why cannot Myanmar export manufactured goods? First of all, market access did matter for the case of garment and apparel. The graph clearly shows the impact of United States sanctions on Myanmar's garment exports in 2003. On the contrary, Vietnam successfully increased its exports of garment after U.S. bilateral trade agreement in December 2001. Now, Myanmar regained access to the United States market and other advanced nations. So the garment exports will inevitably increase. Second, for the case of electronic and electronics products, I call E&E products, which is one of the most important export items of East Asian countries, foreign direct investment, FDI, did matter. You can see the Malaysia and Thailand are deeply integrated in the E&E production networks, and Vietnam is now penetrating into this production network. However, Myanmar, together with Cambodia and Laos, they are yet to join them. In order to join E&E production networks, Myanmar needs FDI. However, during the military government period, Myanmar received very little FDI in manufacturing sector due to international sanctions and bad investment climate. But this trend has changed under the Thein government. The number of FDI in manufacturing sector substantially increased in 2012 and 2013. Sorry, I did not show the 2013. And this is the number of the project, not the value. If you see the value, still the resource sector occupies the majority, and also those investments done by the China and Thailand. In this way, the new international environment makes export-oriented and FDI-driven strategy possible for Myanmar. By the way, Myanmar is regarded as resource-rich country, including natural gas. But is Myanmar really resource-rich? Exports of resources bring about a certain amount of foreign exchange. For example, the natural gas earned 3.1 billion US dollars in 2008. But this is only 50 US dollars per capita. On the other hand, Myanmar imports a lot of energy, equivalent to 1 billion US dollars of diesel and gasoline in 2010. Myanmar seriously suffers from shortages of electricity, while Bangkok is lightened thanks to natural gas from Myanmar. Myanmar needs to utilize its energy resources inside the country. And lastly, we propose the economic corridor development. Myanmar has long been a missing link in the Mekong region due to poor infrastructure, poor investment climate, and international sanctions. However, now Myanmar is coming back to the international community. Myanmar can be a connecting node or land bridge among or between the neighboring countries and the Indian Ocean. In this context, we propose 4 economic corridors as shown in the map. So let me conclude. The new political and international environment offers Myanmar a good opportunity to join the global and regional economy. Myanmar's participation in East Asia's production networks makes its economy grow faster and contributes to the regional economy as a whole. Myanmar's growth prospect is now bright, but not automatically achieved. So here I propose the new growth strategies such as Agriculture Plus and so on. We still need to translate these growth strategies into a series of implementable programs and projects that requires a shared development vision and close consultation with all stakeholders. Thank you for your attention, and your comments are most welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Kudo Sensei. I just wanted to re-emphasize the points that you made. Agriculture, agglomeration, exports of manufacturers using FDI, and finally infrastructure development, especially along economic corridors. 4 very important messages. Now, the way we propose to manage the rest of the session is I'm going to ask our 3 discussants to give their take on what their institutions are doing in Myanmar, how did they determine these priorities, and how do they cooperate with one another and with the rest of the international community. After they finish, I will have a conversation with them, and then we'll open it up for questions from the audience. So that's how we propose to do the rest of the session. So let me start with Manpreet Anand for your comments on USAID strategy.
Well, thank you very much, Vikram, and thank you to Carnegie for really holding this important conference. I think what we've heard so far, the stage that was set by the 2 ambassadors, and now this presentation actually dovetails really nicely into the work that USAID and really the U.S. government is doing in Myanmar. And I'm really looking forward to hearing what my other colleagues on the panel are going to say. I should start off by saying that we really actually commend our Japanese colleagues for the long-standing work that they've done in in Myanmar for so many years. And it's worth acknowledging. I think the ambassador mentioned it as well. That Prime Minister Abe recently announced nearly $100 million to promote peace in the conflict areas. And I think last year Japan was the top humanitarian aid donor in Myanmar. And so I think these are key things to acknowledge, both the U.S. Investments and attention and focus in Myanmar, but also our Japanese partners who have been there for so long. USAID reestablished a mission in Myanmar in 2012, and we really recognized how if we have a focused and concentrated effort towards a reform process, that we could support the people of Myanmar in this time of transition. In fact, this is a high priority for us. Actually, the USAID Administrator, Dr. Raj Shah, will be visiting Myanmar later this week. He was there just last year around this time. I think it goes to show kind of the emphasis and priority that we place on our assistance programs there. We really are looking forward to the critical 2015 national elections as being a key marker on how the United States is committed to helping Myanmar really lay the foundation for a stable and prosperous future that is determined and shaped by its people. And really central to this process is getting to a peaceful resolution of Myanmar's longstanding armed conflicts and addressing the ongoing intercommunal violence. We feel that only then can you really engage in a genuine and inclusive national dialogue around key reforms to really help cement and lay the groundwork for a prosperous future. And so that's why, as a part of our multifaceted approach in the country, we actually have a strong focus on the peace and reconciliation process. As a part of that, a core part of that is citizen engagement. And that is at the core of the the U.S.-Myanmar Partnership for Democracy, Peace, and Prosperity that was launched in 2012 by both governments, including President Obama, who was there at that time. And so, consistent with the aspirations of the people of Myanmar, that partnership really looks to try to ensure that all people of Myanmar play a vital role in their country's development, and really speaks to the inclusivity notion that Mr. Kudo raised repeatedly in his presentation. So we focus on a common set of shared principles that really helps to direct our strategy in country. It's one of inclusivity, it's one of transparency, one of accountability, and one of local empowerment. And those are our guiding lights as we try to promote economic growth in the country. And I'd like to highlight 3 areas where we are focusing our efforts. The first will be no surprise, as it was, again, mentioned repeatedly in Mr. Kudo's presentation, and that is investing in smallholder farmers as a way to reduce poverty and really jumpstart growth. Second is having a multi-stakeholder engagement strategy in which we engage the private sector as well as civil society to promote improved economic governance. And thirdly, to make sure that we help to lay the groundwork for the right policy framework that encourages responsible private sector investment to sustain inclusive economic growth. This is a country where the key is unlocking agricultural growth and reducing poverty because 70% of the population depends on agriculture for their livelihoods. And so it is a priority for USAID as well to focus on this rural development aspect. And we do that through the lens of focusing on research and technology, but also targeting key policy reforms. And I'm happy to go into those later as the discussion progresses. Also key to this is engaging the private sector and civil society. We've noticed that we've been able to make better progress through participation of civil society and private sector in discussions with government officials in Myanmar about critical reform issues. For example, there was a controversial law around farmer protection or farmer welfare that was actually drastically changed to support small farmers as opposed to giving more control to government regarding crop choices. And so we see that type of engagement really reaping dividends in laying a better policy framework. Of course, key to driving all of this economic growth is making sure that there's not just engagement by the private sector, but that the private sector approaches Myanmar in a responsible way, with responsible investments. And so we think all of these programs and policies that we're supporting in Myanmar is coming at a critical time. I mentioned before, looking forward to the 2015 elections. We think the time is now to put in the right policy framework. I know that the U.S. and the Japanese have mutual objectives in this arena. Some of those were articulated earlier. But especially in the legislative development process, we want to help ensure that that process is transparent, accountable, and participatory. And so we will continue to make those promote those efforts at the highest levels, and we welcome potential areas of collaboration with Japan on those policy issues. At the same time, we will look to other areas of collaboration as well. Myanmar is chairing ASEAN this year. That presents an incredible opportunity or set of opportunities to help push through reform efforts to support Myanmar in better integrating into the ASEAN economic community. And we will continue to support Myanmar in its efforts along these lines. And so just to close, we truly believe this is a historical and pivotal time in Myanmar. And although our mission there is just over a year old, we are heavily engaged, very committed at the highest levels of supporting Myanmar in its transition, and look forward to working with other donors and others in the region, such as Japan, and continuing these reform efforts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Manpreet.
Hi. So I'm going to jump a little to what the private sector is doing. And GE opened its office in Myanmar, representative office in Yangon in May of this past year. So we were, I think, one of the first U.S. companies to establish there. Yeah, I need to bring the mic way down, apparently. Our business to date has been modest, which is really what we've expected. But we signed 2 weeks ago a deal to lease 10 Boeing aircraft to Myanmar Airlines. So for those of you traveling around Myanmar, that should help quite a bit. They're now going to have a very nice fleet of planes. We have had some sales of medical equipment, and sold 2 pieces of power equipment through one Thai and one Indonesian distributors. We're now looking at bidding on the first World Bank power project that was announced. So we're very excited about that. Myanmar actually has an installed base of about 24 GE gas turbines dating well before the sanctions, some of them going back about 40 years. So we are also in discussions with Myanmar on how to upgrade them, which would really double or triple their efficiency and electricity output. So really, with only 26% of the population having access to electricity, installing power is the top priority for Myanmar's government. And, everyone that we've talked to, that is their top priority. And I think, as we've heard, they want to move into manufacturing. And, they know that you're not going to be able to attract or have manufacturing facilities if you don't have good and consistent power. For those of you who have been there, you know that power is not good and consistent, and that's a big problem. I think also, from a political standpoint, the government very much knows, wants to improve the standard of living for its people, and having power is one of the best obvious things that the government can do to really improve the standard of living. GE is really committed to work with Myanmar to address its power challenges, even though doing business there is challenging. They need a great deal of capacity building. At this point, they don't really know how to procure equipment. They're coming off of a big deficit of information and activity on really the international scene, so they don't have procurement knowledge. They have a lot of lack of how to finance projects. They are still trying to work through having power purchase agreements, so there's a real knowledge gap in the country. GE announced in June, right after we established our office, a $7 million corporate social responsibility package that comprised of donations of healthcare equipment and healthcare training. They've asked us to work on part of a master electricity plan, which we're doing, as well as some electrical training. And then they've also asked us to do, we're also put in place leadership training and rule of law training. In terms of the leadership training, we're doing a program with the Lee Kuan Yew School in Singapore, where we're bringing groups there every year. We did in January what we call a Train the Trainers program, where we brought a group of instructors to Myanmar to train a lot of senior level people in a whole range of things, including procurement, rule of law, that they can then train others in the government. And we brought a fairly senior level group to our training facility in upstate New York, and they're actually there this week, and I'm going to be joining them tomorrow to really learn management training, which was something they had asked us for. So, we're trying to really work with them to help them move forward in ways that are going to be complementary. We're very pleased that Exim announced that it opened in Myanmar a few weeks ago. We're hoping that OPIC will be soon behind them. We're happy to work with the U.S. government. When I was last in Myanmar, I went to visit JICA, and their offices are really, really impressive. Obviously the aid they've given is even more impressive. So we really are looking forward to partnering with Japan in Myanmar, and so I really endorse what's going on here. We've been impressed with how much the Myanmar government wants U.S. companies to invest. They've said that they really want U.S. companies to come in. They want our technology. They know that we invest in their workers and their communities. And most importantly, they've said that they really want to do business in a clear and transparent manner. And, they want companies that are going to operate in that way, because I think they're really trying to transition their economy to be more transparent, to be more following the rule of law. And, and I think they want companies that are going to operate in that manner and that are going to move them in that direction. So, we were one of the earliest investors in Vietnam, and I spent time there in 1992 and 1993. And, we just had the 20th anniversary of the embargo lifting and GE's office in the past few months. And we've seen just the enormous, trajectory that Vietnam has gone through. And, we're very hopeful that Myanmar will see the same, hopeful and I think confident that Myanmar is going to really go through the same evolution as Japan over the next 20 years.
Thank you very much, Ori. Nakata-san.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Vikram-san, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Nakata Ryosuke Nakata. I'm a Deputy Director General of the JICA Southeast Asian Department, and I'm looking after our operation in Myanmar and some other countries of JICA. And JICA is operating under the kind of administration or leadership of the Japanese government, and so our operation is basically based upon the Japanese government's main priority areas. And during the kind of isolation era, the Japanese government's kind of main policy towards Myanmar was very restricted to very kind of basic human needs type of activity, or some very urgent needs for like disaster, the relief and those things. But after the new administration took up the government, and the Japanese government has decided to renew this the economic ODA policy, and currently our policy basically consists of basically three the main pillars. One is the improvement of people's livelihood. That includes assistance for the ethnic minorities and poor or rural areas. And the second is capacity building and institutional development. And the third one is development in infrastructure. So under these the broad strategies, the JICA is preparing for specific intervention that we can do in Myanmar. And I should say one of the kind of strengths that JICA can offer, not only to Myanmar, but the JICA has, is that we have different kind of modality or method, modality or modes of our intervention. That consists of one is technical assistance. And technical assistance covers not only for kind of hiring consultants for preparing some new master plan or feasibility study, but we can finance dispatching a long-term resident advisor for various government departments. Or we can do the tailor-made type, very specific intervention for example, curriculum preparation for the primary school, or improvement of the primary healthcare the facilities. Those we can do kind of various type of technical assistance, and we can also offer various financial assistance, and both grant assistance and the concession loan assistance. Grant assistance is mainly used for the relatively small size project which does not generate a direct financial benefit. Like a very rural kind of the infrastructure or health facilities, those things. And we can also offer relatively large-scale concessional loans for economic infrastructure. So I must mention several of the JICA's recent the commitment for the Myanmar. Those, the power sector or the infrastructure, railway, those relatively large-size economic infrastructure are one of the areas that we have very much specific interest. And under this the broad strategy, we can offer various kinds of assistance for Myanmar. That includes, for example, the assistance for national reconciliation through the development of the area where ethnic minorities are living. Or we can do, or we are actually doing several institutional reform projects for the market, conducive for market economy. That includes the capacity development for Central Bank of Myanmar, or we are now doing kind of capacity development and some, other grant assistance project for customs the reform. And we are financing various the logistic infrastructure of the Myanmar, which is good for the Kudo Sensei's presentation for FDI and the export-led growth strategy. So these are the probably I should say that one of the kind of features that the JICA can offer for Myanmar. And as I said, during the isolation era, the JICA, the Japanese government assistance, are mainly focusing on poverty reduction, health, and those social sectors. But still, we are putting our emphasis on these social or sectors. But in addition to that, we are putting pretty much emphasis under the new administration for the economic development, economic growth, and we are financing various infrastructure or various institutional reform projects, and using our technical assistance facilities or our financial assistance. And as Kudo Sensei, the president said, currently, or other ambassadors, president says, currently Myanmar economy is posting very good economic growth, like 6 or 7% of GDP growth. But that is good, but still it seems to us that the current short-term growth is pretty much supported by the private sector's expenditure, like a consumption for the consumption expenditure, including durable goods like automobile and motorcycles. So we would like to help the Myanmar government to transform this current short-term economic growth the prospect for more sustainable, long-term, stable economic growth. And in order for us to do that, or in order for the government to do that, as the Kuro-sensei's presentation says, to utilize the very strategic location that Myanmar has to connecting South Asia, East Asia, and Southeast Asia are the probably core, and help them to participate in the production network in Asian regions probably one of the core that the government should do, and this is where the JICA has a pretty much big emphasis. But one thing that we are repeatedly discussing with the Myanmar government is that in order for that Myanmar to attract sufficient investment for this, the modern the manufacturing sector, there is a huge competition because there are so many. Much development for the kind of industry relocation in Asian countries. A few years ago, the China Plus One was being talked, but currently so-called Thai Plus One, and some of the production facility that, for example, the Japanese company have in Thailand is kind of located some neighboring countries, and already Cambodia or Laos, those countries are starting to participate in that process. So there's a huge kind of competition that Myanmar should compete with in order to attract those private investment. So in order for them to kind of win this competition, that various infrastructure development, especially the power sector, the key of this industry development. So the government should first of all to achieve immediately kind of the tangible result. But at the same time, infrastructure is a very much kind of network product. So rather than kind of once this physical structure is constructed, this is very difficult and costly to take it back. So at the same time, the government should prepare for the longer term, efficient infrastructure development plan. And this is what JICA is also assisting in various aspects. Like we have completed like a Yangon City Urban Development Master Plan, and we are now preparing the Urban Transport Master Plan in Yangon. And we are financing, this is not a master plan, but survey type study for the power sector development. So we hope that these kind of master plan type of activity JICA is financing can form the very basic of the Myanmar government's the sector development strategy. And this is the kind of second issue that Vikram-san mentioned, how JICA is prioritizing our kind of activity. So based upon there are several projects that Myanmar government can do without the very deep scrutinization. So we would like to finance those quick, those kind of no regrets project. But at the same time, we would like to help the government to prepare for the medium or long-term future. So we would like to, during the course of these other discussions, especially for the master plan type of activity, we'd like to align our activity in the medium-term government priority. That is how we are working with the government to align our activity in Myanmar's government's development strategy. But beyond that, the sector prioritization, we need to work on a little more kind of overall country partnership type, things. We have this country the partnership strategy with various other countries, but still, in the case of Myanmar, we have not yet reached to that level because Myanmar government does not have their comprehensive development plan. I'm not saying that they don't have any idea. They have so many kind of good idea what are the main ingredients of this development strategy, and those discussions being discussed in the field. But still, the government does not have a clear the written documents for expressing their long-term development the goals. And this is what we still, or what the government in Myanmar still should do in order for all those stakeholders, not only public development partners, but the private sectors can align each other's activities in line with government the priorities. And for the collaboration with other development partners, I think in the case of Myanmar, the kind of development partners the collaboration is very much well organized. In the field, there are, I think, 17 sector working groups, and each sector working groups are chaired by multilateral leaders and bilateral leaders. And JICA is taking a lead for health, public finance, power, and transport. So, and under these sector working group, each major development partners participate in discussion for discussing their strategy, what are the possible interventions for the next few years. And these discussions being discussed. So I think in Myanmar, that kind of the donor coordination would be are very well organized. And what we need to work on in addition is something I've been discussing in earlier session, but how we are able to get the non-traditional donors involved in this process, like China, India, Thailand. And as Ambassador Ted said, last month, there was a big conference, the Myanmar Development Cooperation Forum. And in this forum, there was a representative of China, India, and Thailand. That was a very good kind of development. But that is a very big forum, rather than have a very substantive discussion of the, the intervention. So how those, participation in the MCDF into a more kind of, working level kind of collaboration, not only for the traditional donor, but, emerging donor, is kind of another challenge that we should work on. So these are very what I would say at first.
Thank you very much, Nakata-san. All right, so let me ask our panelists a few questions. I don't wish to put them on the spot, but they're not going to be easy questions because these are difficult issues. I'm going to ask Kudo-sensei a question. You laid out 4 very important priorities, what to do: agriculture, agglomeration, as you said, exports and of manufacturing through FDI, and finally you mentioned infrastructure development along corridors. Now these are what need to be done. The big question always in developing countries is how do you do it? What are the policies? Now, clearly, there would be a very large number of policies, so I don't want you to go through all of them. But can you give us a sense of what you consider to be the 3 or 4 most important things that Myanmar could do, given the fact that its capacity, as we know, is weak, its institutions are relatively weak? So what are the 3 or 4 low-hanging fruit that Myanmar can pluck that will make a big difference for these 4 objectives that you've laid out?
Vikram-san, thank you very much. You asked me very difficult question, saying it's not difficult question. Actually, I talked at strategy, but that is sort of the direction of the strategy, not to exact policy. So whenever things come down to the policy or the issue, or sector issues, concrete issues, it is always difficult. So I feel like it's quite difficult for me to pick up 3, 4 things because, how to say, this is like the students waiting for the examination just around the corner. So you have to take the exam 1 week later, but you have the textbooks are piling up, but what you have to do, from what books you start, you don't know. That's why the Nakata-san tell us that master plan. Because without knowing the big picture, without knowing the whole picture, you cannot prioritize, you cannot make the sequences. So first you have to know what you want to go, and then what steps you have to go. For that, Myanmar government is doing very well, but they are very, very busy with their daily things and then receiving the foreign guests and going to the foreign countries and so on. So one thing that they need to absorb all those knowledges and sit down and then talk with all the stakeholders, including the donors, and then to have a sort of image of the big picture in the sector that what you have to do. Then I think you can start to prioritize.
Do you mind if I?
Yes, please.
So I think, low-hanging fruit in this time of transition in Myanmar is hard to come by. Everything is a challenge. And much like what we do internally within USAID with, a finite amount of resources, both human and financial or otherwise, we have to prioritize. And we go through an exercise of focusing and concentrating on specific priorities where we think we can make the biggest impact given our own internal capacities. And so we've done that exercise for what we think we can do with Myanmar. It starts with the foundation of this U.S.-Myanmar partnership for democracy, peace, and prosperity. And it is a continual process in which we engage with other donors, with private sector entities, with civil society groups in country, and of course with the government of Myanmar. And so I laid out some of the principles and some of the priorities that we're focused on. If you look at one sector of agriculture, we have identified a few key areas, a few key policies in which we think if you're able to make significant reforms, that it can actually lead to inclusive economic growth and lay the foundation for that. So if you take agriculture, for example, a few key policy areas. One is a national land use policy that secures land rights for smallholder farmers and investors. Two is national input policies so that you can get better quality seeds, reliable seeds and fertilizers. There's, of course, the Farmer Welfare Act, which I referred to earlier, about giving choice to farmers to plant what they think is appropriate. And then looking at constraints to the value chain, which is so important where infrastructure, both hard and soft, there's a lot of gaps there. So there are a few key policies that we've determined in our analysis and working with other actors where we think if you can make significant reforms that you can actually move the ball in promoting inclusive economic growth.
Terrific. Actually, I'm reminded of this very interesting statistic in Myanmar that rice production, hasn't increased that much over the last 20 years, but pulses production has actually grown 12-fold. So it's a very interesting exercise to try and understand why one part of the agricultural sector is doing remarkably well, whereas another part, which is, of course, the most important part, rice production, hasn't been. And it's a very interesting exercise because it does point to these constraints that you mentioned. All right, I want to ask you a question. I really enjoyed your presentation. It was so concrete and specific. And so I wanted to ask you, what have you been most pleasant...
Very private sector-like.
Very private sector. What have you been most pleasantly surprised by in your interaction, in your work in Myanmar? And what do you think remain perhaps two or three of the most important constraints that the private sector faces in Myanmar that you wish the government would resolve so that business could proceed?
So I would say what I've been incredibly pleasantly surprised by is just the real earnestness of the government. And I've been fortunate to have made a couple trips with senior GE people where we met sort of all the top leadership, and they've struck me as being incredibly sincere about wanting to turn their country around, about wanting to transition the country to be, to a rule of law country. They know they have very far to go, but they are, very anxious and trying to embark on that journey and really wanting to bring in all the different components that are going to really help get them there. So I've been just incredibly pleasantly struck by that. And I would say that, they are quite aware of the challenges that they face. And they really, are not, I'd say, in denial about the difficulties, which doesn't mean it's easy to do, but I think they're aware of the challenges. I think some of the things that need to happen, I think, as I mentioned, purchase power agreement be very helpful. to really move the power sector forward. And I, of course, I may be a bit biased, but I think that's a really important component of getting power and moving the whole economy forward. Other than that, I think, and this is not a magic bullet, but I think they need a great deal of capacity, building and training that, certainly USAID, JICA, the World Bank, and the private sector is trying to give them in terms of really having the knowledge base of how to move the economy forward, how to put all these building blocks into place.
Thank you, Art. Nakata-san, very interesting presentation as well, and JICA's a significant part of JICA's emphasis is on infrastructure. Now, I'd like you to tell us a little bit more about what is exactly happening in Tilawa. When will it be ready? When do you expect investments to start flowing in? How large is it? And a little bit as well about Dawei. I mean, the two big projects, one of which, of course, Japan is fully involved in, and the other in which it is also becoming involved in, the Dawei project. Could you give us a brief summary of what's happening there?
Okay. Tirawa, probably many of you know that the Myanmar government has offered to develop kind of so-called special economic zone. They named three areas. One is Tirawa, the other one is the Dawei and the Chaopyu for development of industrial zone. And this is exactly in line with earlier kind of experience of other Southeast Asian countries done to concentrate some of the financial resources, or also for the reform efforts too. Because in order to attract those private investment, each government should do those kind of liberalization or various reforms. But for any kind of reform, they will match with some kind of resistance from the vested interest. So in order to agree on those various reform activity in a very short period of time, to concentrate those the efforts in some specific area is what the other Asian countries, including China or Vietnam, Thailand, those countries done. And so from that kind of the purpose, the Japanese government has decided to assist those SEZ. And Japan takes a lead role in Tirawa, and the Chaopyu is handled by China, and Dawei mainly handled by Thailand. But now there is a kind of discussion that whether Japan can offer another assistance for or kind of the intervention in Dawei too. And Tirawa is one of the SEZ that probably the one which has most kind of progress among those three. And I think a few months ago, October, November, the Japanese the private sector firms had formed the SPC and signed a memorandum of understanding with the Myanmar government. And they have already started to promote the kind of investment from various Japanese private sectors. And currently, what we are thinking is sometime by 2015, the first round of the investment will flow in to Tirawa SEZ. And this Tirawa SEZ is kind of assisted by the JICA's the private sector's wing, not directly under my administration. So I just I have to say that those are kind of reported from our department, but. Those the JICA is going to probably participate in some minority the share of the the special company, and my department more kind of considering the government activity. We are financing various supporting the infrastructure like roads, ports, the power sector development in order to assist the kind of smooth operation with Tirawa. So that is how we have been operating. And the Dawei is a little bit kind of difficult part. Dawei is a much more kind of the bigger the SEZ that the Myanmar government and the Thai government are considering to develop. And how the Japan is going to participate in Dawei is still to be determined because first, now we are kind of seeing Tirawa, SEZ, and the Japanese private sectors decide to take risk and make an investment for this Tirawa. So we'd like to see the kind of the success of Tirawa first, and probably the first thing first, and the second thing second. So I'd like to I'd like to confirm that our Tirawa development be on a successful path for the development, and I should not say that only after that we should consider other way, but still in comparison with Tirawa discussion, our discussion of the way is a little bit kind of lag behind, and still probably it is too early for me to say anything about the other way.
Thank you very much. I fully subscribe to that view. First things first. All right, let's open it up for questions and comments from the floor. Raise your hands. Please give us your name and your institution affiliation when you ask a question. If you want to ask it to a specific panelist, please let us know. Priscilla, can we have up here? Let's get 3 questions, and then we'll...
Thank you. I'm Priscilla Clapp. I would like to direct a question to Orit. Sorry for this, but it's a kind of a tough question. But can you tell me whether GE's activities in Myanmar are coming up against U.S. policy, and particularly the crony list, the SDN list? Does that seriously inhibit GE's activity there? Are you running up against that?
Thank you,
I don't mean
Priscilla.
it as a hostile question, because I don't
No.
disagree with that policy, but I'm interested in what your experience is.
It was a question I was proposing to ask in the last session of today, but I'm glad you asked it in the first session. Can we have somebody right at the back? The lady at the back, can we get a mic to the lady right at the back? Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Injin Nine from Voice of America. Yes, I would like to ask Japanese panelists. I don't know who can answer that. I mean, for Burmese people, how they can trust the foreign investors, because in Burma, most of the business, 99% are occupied by the military business group and cronies. So, so how, people can get the benefit from the foreign investment. So
Thank you. That's terrific. All right. There's a gentleman right there. Thank you. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is So Uehara from Marubeni.
Sorry, from?
Marubeni?
Marubeni.
Yes. Just a quick question. I wanted to just echo the first question regarding the SDN list, the cronies list, and a question to the Japanese panelists. Have you heard of any Japanese companies facing similar issues with regards to the U.S. sanctions list? Thank you.
Thanks. So let's deal with the 2 SDN questions first, Orit, and then Nakata-san.
So, look, it's a difficult environment. There's no question, for many reasons. That, and obviously there are many business and political people on the SDN list, and that is a challenge. That being said, we are very committed to follow, not just the letter of U.S. law, but the spirit of U.S. law. And, we spend a lot of time doing due diligence to make sure we're complying with U.S. law, and our own due diligence, which is sometimes above and beyond, to really make sure that the people we partner with are people, that we feel comfortable doing business with and that are going to meet our high standards. So, I think we're managing to work our way through that, and we understand that it's a process. It's a process that the U.S. government is going through with Myanmar, and it's a process that Myanmar is going through. And
is it a frustrating process?
But there are opportunities beyond.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, it's difficult, but I think there are opportunities for sure.
Yeah, and for JICA, so far we have not have any experience of facing any conflict with the SDN list. What I heard is, actually Marubeni is one of the, the shareholder of TLSCZ. And during that, time, those kind of discussion has been kind of, discussed whether those potential, the kind of investor in TLSCZ would be, subject to this, the CDN list. But so far, I've heard is that there are, not kind of direct conflict, and those, three Japanese private firms were able to, have kind of normal business with potential TLSCZ. And the question of how the Myanmar Burmese people can get benefit from the foreign investor is actually like for example one of the the kind of experience that we had in other neighboring Asian countries, that although some of those SEZ or many foreign invested firms can operate, but we probably those government and JICA too do not want those the SEZ or foreign investment company become a kind of enclave, totally disconnected rest of the country. And in order to spread this the development results of modern the industrial sector to benefit for the other ordinary people, the kind of support of the local industry, local supporting industry, mainly small and medium scale industries development is very much a critical kind of link to connect those the modern sector and the ordinary people. And probably this is related to the first question, how to of the Kudo Sensei's presentation. Probably one of the common thing for even for agriculture or this the local kind of development is lack of access to finance. And still, the Myanmar's, the financial system is very much kind of early stage of development, and the country is very much kind of cash society, which is not conducive for a modern level of economic activity. And in order for those, the farmers to modernize their production, and they need to make investment for agriculture machinery, or in order to they grow those local supporting industry, they have to get access to finance. But still, those financial system is very much kind of the primitive, and those loan decisions are pretty much based upon the land collateral. How this Myanmar can make a reform towards the overall financial system development, and how to prepare the kind of environment that ordinary people, including farmers and small industry, can benefit from this development is probably one of the missing links.
Thank you very much, Nakata-san. We'll have the gentleman here, the lady here, and Amy there.
Hi, thank you. Jim Michael, I'm an independent consultant in development. I was just curious that there is a history of Myanmar participation in regional programs designed to improve infrastructure for transportation, telecommunications, and energy. And the discussion has been largely as if this was starting something new. And I just wondered if there was some basis in that history of participation in the regional activities that gives you something to work with in terms of local capacity.
Excellent question. Thank you. Yes, the lady here. Yes, please.
Thank you. My name is Linda Yar at George Washington University. There has been quite a bit of emphasis in the talks about the need to support agriculture, infrastructure, capacity building. And yet, although Myanmar is subject to sea level rise, drought, and extreme weather events that we've seen in recent years, there's been no mention of climate change, or what I would term climate-wise development. To what extent do your assistance plans explicitly incorporate the need to build resilience?
Wow, that's a terrific question. Thank you. Amy, yes.
Hi, Abigail Friedman, the Asia Foundation. This is another how-to question for Mr. Nakata. Last fall, Prime Minister Abe committed Japan to supporting economic empowerment of women, or just the empowerment of women globally. So in terms of Myanmar, Japan's probably most important donor assistance partnership, how do you envision applying that? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kudo-sensei, can you try the first one, the really interesting question that, is there something to build on for infrastructure, et cetera? Do you have institutions and systems in place in Myanmar that one can use as a foundation for future development? Or is it that things have to really begin from scratch?
You mean in what area?
In the areas of infrastructure, telecommunications. What else did you mention? Another sector? Energy. Yeah.
Yes, I'm not well given the information on those textiles, but I think as far as I understand that the infrastructure sector that I think they have to do from the almost a scratch. Every area is lacking the many modern infrastructure areas. But as for the manufacturing sector, I think there is some foundations in terms of the people, in terms of the entrepreneurship and some skills remaining in that area in the history.
Thank you. Do you want to add something to that, Nakata-san?
For this, the kind of regional infrastructure development initiative, this is mainly chaired by the ADB, so-called the Greater Mekong Sub-Region Development Program. And Myanmar has participated in this program. But still, the Myanmar, the participation was, during the previous administration, the participation was not so much active. So, as Kudo-sensei said, still, actually more kind of concrete intervention, and under this Greater Mekong Sub-Region the initiative is a relatively early stage of development. So that is why various donors, including JICA, World Bank, ADB, are supporting the infrastructure kind of development master plan, those things. And women empowerment. Yes, actually, these are one of the areas that the Prime Minister Abe raised as one of his, kind of government agenda. And this is one of the kind of subject that recent, Japanese government, U.S. government dialogue for assistance, not only to Myanmar, but various, other countries. And we agree, the government has agreed to the women empowerment as one of the kind, key area for assistance. But where to start is still yet to be decided. And probably, not only for women empowerment, there are various kind of joint initiative between Japanese government and U.S. government. And usually, once, we can select that major theme or topic, then we should kind of do the kind of inventory work. What are the kind of area, the specific intervention that we are doing, or we are kind of preparing for the next few years, and try to do the matching type of the discussion, and so that we can make these those projects which already kind of been discussed with the respective government to be suitable for this topic, because we cannot do something which is totally come out of the air, which is not aligned with the respective government priority. So even if this is a kind of new initiative between two governments, but we'd like to have this project or intervention based upon that kind of continuous dialogue with the respective countries. So this is very much still early stage. And climate change is really difficult. And when we prepare those kind of master plan, so we try to incorporate that mainstreaming of adaptation for various other areas. And for agriculture sector too, Myanmar is a very wide country, and depending upon location, one of the areas we kind of draft kind of prone area. One of the areas, on the other hand, very much kind of flood prone area. So based upon that, characteristic of those each region, we are designing our kind of specific intervention for the agricultural development. Definitely, this mainstreaming of the climate change issue is additional issue that we should work on from now on for making our kind of specific intervention program.
Thank you, Nakata-san. Manpreet, do you want to add something on
I'll just add quickly that on the resilience question, I'm really glad you brought it up, because this is something that I think the development community as a whole is grappling with, to how to look at various aspects of resilience in a holistic way, but then really fit for purpose for what a particular geography might be facing. And so in Asia, unfortunately, it's home to the most natural disasters in the world. You mentioned a few aspects, rising sea levels, of course, typhoons, there are earthquakes, there are so many rapid onset disasters that really stress not just the humanitarian assistance providers, but really the people in those countries. And so how do you create risk mitigation strategies? How do you build in adaptive capacity within communities to face those types of natural disasters, but then also think about resilience in other aspects of what happens when there are droughts or floods that affect agricultural communities and output? What happens in areas that have unfortunately been conflict-ridden for so many years, and how do people build in resilience or adaptive capacity to those types of shocks? And this is really what we're talking about, shocks from an economic perspective or fiscal perspective or political perspective. How do you build a strategy that really targets and builds in that adaptive capacity? So at USAID, we're doing a lot of work on this now. And some is already ongoing and has been ongoing, but we're actually trying to step up our efforts here and really take a much more strategic approach to this, not just in a place like Myanmar, but across the world where we have presence.
Thank you, Manpreet. Actually, we have to now bring this to a close, but what I'm going to ask is, because we are running a little bit out of time, I'm going to ask our panelists to give you, I'd originally asked them to give us a minute sort of a concluding statement, but I'm going to reduce it to 30 seconds. Sort of the 3 or 4 messages that you want this audience to walk away with. So I'm going to go in reverse order. I'm going to ask Nakata-san to come up with his messages, and then we'll go this way. Nakata-san.
Okay, thank you very much. And as we have discussed in this session, the Myanmar government, there are so many things that are left undone in Myanmar for its future development. But the Myanmar government has done tremendous work for the past few years, including a unification exchange rate and those things. So first of all, we should first commend those authorities the very specific action so far. But as I said, there are so many things that are left undone, and and there are huge kind of tasks that the government should do, and there is huge room that the different partner or private sector should work on. So those are not any single development partner can handle everything. So the kind of collaboration for the strategy and the kind of alignment of our activity for government priority are kind of very much essential. And for that purpose, this kind of dialogue is very much important. And the next issue is how our operation can be kind of harmonized with private sector's participation. And there are so many kind of forums to discuss the kind of business kind of environment of Myanmar, but still those are very much kind of one-time discussion. What we have to do is have a more kind of time-bound, action-oriented program which should be monitored regularly. And this is what we have done in case of Vietnam. The Japanese government had a so-called Vietnam-Japan Joint Initiative for Business Environment. And the two governments has agreed to initiate the same kind of dialogue with Myanmar government too. So probably during the course of this discussion, the private sector's participation, how we are able to help the Myanmar government to prepare those the environment is a good kind of initiative that we should be looking for.
Thank you, Nakata-san. All right.
So just to follow on, I agree. I think one of the challenges that Myanmar has, which is in the scheme of things a good challenge, is that they have an embarrassment of riches. Everybody is giving them a lot of training, aid, support, and how to assimilate all of it. So I think coordinating and working together is going to be a really important way to go. I know that for what we're doing in the electricity sector, we've worked really closely with JICA and the ADB and the World Bank in terms of planning. And I think that the more that we can all partner together, for capacity building, rule of law, and technical training, the better it will be for Myanmar to sort of absorb and assimilate all the aid and support that they're getting.
Thank you. Manpreet?
Yeah, I'll just 30 seconds, 3 key points. First, time is now. There's a window of opportunity before the 2015 elections to really push hard and support the peace process and what that could mean for the country. Secondly, it really requires a multi-stakeholder approach, one that isn't just about donors and the government of Myanmar, but that includes local civil society and communities, NGOs, as well as private sector who are looking for responsible investment. And third, that there are actually some key policy areas which, if done right and in the appropriate way, could be extremely impactful for the people of Myanmar.
Yes, thank you. The Myanmar's the importance of the Myanmar's return to the international community and ASEAN. Not only for the Myanmar itself, but also that is important to the region and the international communities. Previously, Myanmar was sort of the rogue, but now this is the self-reforms. They are doing the self-reforms, and if they are successfully transit to the democracy with the human rights country, then I think this is the big impact to not only Myanmar, but also the region.
Thank you very much. Before I ask you to join me in thanking our panelists, I just want to make a couple of announcements. One is that we're going to have a coffee break after this. Please do come back at 11:10 promptly, because you don't want to miss the presentation by Professor David Steinberg, who will begin the next session. I can assure you, will be a very good presentation indeed. So please join me in thanking our panelists and our presenters.